we are going to grow a ton of fruits and vegetables in containers this year.
Guten Yardening, everybody! Well, I am super excited for this video because today we're going to talk about 10 of our favorite vegetables and fruits to grow in containers.
And if you were to look around our property right now, you would see container after container just waiting to be planted. And a large part of the reason why we have so many of these containers out here is because we've had quite a bit of success growing in a wide variety of shapes and sizes of containers.
And so in today's video, we're going to focus in on 10 of our favorites. Now, the fruits and vegetables we're going to talk about today have been chosen for some specific reasons. Part of it is based on their plant size, meaning can they fit in a container easily or not. Part of it's based on their overall productivity. We want to pick vegetables that are going to be nice and productive, especially if you're growing them in a smaller space. And then the all-important factor of our own personal experience growing these in containers. And so while this isn't an exhaustive list, and there are many more vegetables that you can grow in containers, this represents a kind of top 10 for us.
Potatoes are one of our favorite vegetables to grow in containers, and we've had a ton of success with our early, mid, and even late season varieties. Now, they do require a bit of a bigger container, although we've also found success growing in some of our 3 to 5 gallon grow bags. What we like to do with ours is to upcycle some of our plastic containers, our food safe plastic, and I will tell you the ease of harvesting these potatoes is real, and that's one of the reasons why we love growing potatoes in containers. Sweet potatoes are another vegetable that grow really well in containers. Now, typically with sweet potatoes, even if you grow the bush variety, which has a smaller amount of greens, you're still going to need a larger container because they need a decent amount of depth. But we've also found with these that black containers work really well. We use some 17 and 18 gallon black containers because that black keeps the soil a little bit warmer. And the end results, well, we've had results as high as 8 to 10 pounds of sweet potatoes per container. And again, we come back to this idea of ease of harvesting. Anytime you grow in containers, you're able to harvest really easily. And growing in containers also gives you the opportunity to try a bunch of different varieties in a small space so you can see which ones grow the best in a limited area.
As we continue through this list, we know that you may have others in your top 10, so please leave us a comment and let us know which are your favorite vegetables to grow in containers.
Peppers. Now, when it comes to peppers, this actually might be one of the most ideal way to grow peppers, especially if you plan to grow them as perennials instead of annuals. And since you can keep peppers alive for multiple years, if you grow them in containers and you live in an area where the grow zone gets really cold and gives us that frost over the winter, if you grow in containers, then you can bring them inside over the winter. They don't get too big, although you may end up for some varieties need to give a little bit of a tomato cage or some support. You'll find that they perform well even in smaller containers. When it comes to tomatoes, it doesn't matter if you're growing micro tomatoes, determinate varieties, or even indeterminate varieties. Most perform quite well in containers. And one of the things that we've learned about this is you can use a tomato cage in a container just the same way as you use it in your main garden space. And so you can keep these tomatoes supported as they grow in containers, and they'll still produce really well. We've had particular success with our cherry tomatoes growing in containers, but I will say just all around, we love our tomatoes. So anytime that you're in a smaller location and you want to have the opportunity to grow even a single tomato plant, containers are a fantastic way to go. Now for us, eggplant in containers just makes sense. Eggplant is highly productive. It doesn't have a huge size, so it can actually grow in even a 2 or 3 gallon plastic container. And I think you'll find with eggplant that you can start them a little bit earlier if you grow in containers because you can bring that soil from indoors where that soil is nice and warm. So you can get this going pretty early on and you can keep it growing for quite some time. And remember, eggplant produces for multiple months once you get it going. And if you're growing these eggplant in containers, then that means what you're feeding it can be different than what you're feeding some of your other vegetables. For example, your sweet potatoes or your potatoes. So that's again another added benefit to trying to grow eggplant in containers. Now, strawberries are excellent to grow in containers. And when we talk about containers for strawberries, we could be talking about plastic containers, or we could be talking about something like our green stalk vertical garden. Strawberries do an excellent job growing vertically, and that's one of the things that we absolutely love. And one of the things that's important with strawberries is to get an optimal amount, because, you know, once they start producing, you want as many as possible. And so if you have a good amount of strawberries in a small space, again, for example, in our vertical garden, then you're in for a magical treat. And you're going to find that this might be one of the best ways to get the most production in a limited area. Summer squash are one of my favorites, and I know that they often produce really well over an extended period of time as long as you keep them healthy. And you can grow them in containers as small as 3 to 5 gallons. One of the things we know about summer squash is that they don't spread out the same way that winter squash do. And so you're able to contain them within these containers, and then you can plant other vegetables in your main garden space if you have them. One of the other things that we know is that we've struggled with powdery mildew in the past in our area. And powdery mildew spores can live in the soil. And so if you have powdery mildew one season, it's possible you could pass it on to the next season of your summer squash. And so one of the things that's nice about growing in a container is that you have the ability to prevent that. You can change out the mix as needed. And also, if you're having an area where there's powdery mildew, you can move your container to a different place so you don't have to deal with that year over year. Peas are another vegetable that is great for containers. They're super easy to start from seed, and as long as whenever you're planting them, you provide them the supports that they're going to need to climb up, they work really well in containers. They will quite easily attach to a tomato cage or whatever kind of support you want to provide in the pot. So again, put the support in right away, put the seeds in, and watch it grow so easily in your container. Beans are next on our list, and we talk about beans a lot, but one of the nice things about beans is that there are the bush and the pole bean varieties. And if you want to grow bush beans in a container, or even the pole beans with support, you won't have very much problem. And since beans are so nutritious, it makes sense that if you're going to have to pick a vegetable to grow in a small space like a container, beans should be up there on your list. They're super productive, so it just makes sense to add them to your container list. And last but not least, we have our citrus and our fig trees. And the reason we're making this suggestion is because we've found personal success growing citrus here out of the grow zone area. Because remember, we're in zone 5, but we're growing it out of the grow zone area that these citrus are made for. For example, our tangerine and our Meyer lemon. Because we grow them in containers, we're able to limit the size that they grow to, still get production, and then move them indoors when the weather outside gets too cold. We have our Chicago hardy fig as well. And in our first year of growing that, we got multiple figs. So we were able to get great production, and then we moved it indoors because we kept it in a container. This is one of the benefits of growing citrus or even these other fruit trees, and there's a wide variety in containers. You can check out different varieties that you would never be able to grow in your grow zone and try them out and move them as needed depending on your season. And if, like us, you have a limited amount of space and you don't want 15 or 20-foot trees overshadowing the rest of your garden, it just makes sense to put them in containers.
Well, we hope this video was helpful to you, and we hope you're considering growing in containers this year. It really frees up a lot of space in your main garden and gives you a ton of flexibility. And these vegetables for us are right there at the top of our list. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give us a like, leave us a comment, remember to share and subscribe, and most importantly, remember, when you're with us, you are good to grow.